Hello and welcome to Zoom with Czarny. I'm Dustin Czarny, Democratic Elections Commissioner for Onondaga County. This is my interview show where I talk to democracy advocates and Democratic candidates in and around Onondaga County going into the 2024 presidential election. I'm back on my weekly schedule of Commissioner in a Car, Zoom with Czarny, and weekly wonks all weekly, although I'm a little late on my weekly walk this week. I was hoping to get those out on Wednesdays, and I'm still hoping on doing that going forward, but the weekly walk this week will come this weekend. But I'm very happy to come to you today with my interview with the Baldwinsville Village candidates. The Baldwinsville Village candidates, Brighter Baldwinsville is their group. They're not running on Democratic lines, but they did ask for an interview, and I thought it was important to talk with them because there are village elections next week, March 19th. We talked to the Fayetteville Village candidates last week and the Baldwinsville Village candidates this week. And if you go to onvote.net on the village page, you can get all the information on how to participate for the village elections that are happening on March 19th. So please stick around for that interview. This week, one House budgets came out for the New York State Legislature, which has great news for local elections. $10 million in aid to localities and $14 million in poll book replacement are in the budget. Another, great year, for both houses, Assembly and Senate. Now we'll see if those survive through the budget process with the governor, although I will note that the governor already had $14 million in her budget. And also there's several $1 million in the budget for paying for absentee ballot postage. So when local politicians talk about unfunded mandates, it's just not true. The New York State has funded a lot of the stuff that, or given partial funds to the county boards of elections each year for the last 5 years. There's been some kind of funding that has come through. So, it's just a fallacy, and I push back about it. And I talked about that on my interview this week with Capitol Press Room with Dave Lombardo. Check that out on my website, dustinczarny.com. We talked about the release of the budgets and also some of the legislative things that I want the bipartisan boards of elections want for this session. So stay tuned for my interview with Brighter Baldwinsville, the Baldwinsville Village candidates, where we talk about they're contesting the village board races for the first time in quite some time, and also the dueling propositions to move their elections to either June or November. Stay tuned. And we're back, and I'm so happy to have my old and new friends here coming on the program, the Baldwinsville Village candidates for Village Board, Donna Freyleue, James Miller, and Brian Burmeister. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming on Zoom with Czarny.
Hello, thank you.
Hello, Dustin.
So, as I said in the intro, there's a village election on March 19th. All of you are running to be on the village board. It's the first time we've really seen this kind of competition in Baldwinsville. And I know a lot of you, but I maybe the audience doesn't. So I'm going to ask you to kind of give us a little background about yourself. We'll start with you, Donna.
Okay, well, I was born and raised in Baldwinsville. I grew up here. I'm a proud member of the Baker High School class of 1974. I am the chairperson of our 50th reunion planning committee. And actually, I was also the chairperson of our very successful 45th reunion planning committee as well. And so I have a strong attachment to my hometown. I went to college at Binghamton University. In those days, it was Harper College of SUNY Binghamton. And I went on to law school at the Boston University School of Law. And like a lot of young people who go to Boston for school, I stayed there and I raised a family. I lived in a small town north of Boston, not unlike Baldwinsville, Ipswich, Massachusetts. And I lived there for 20 years, a total of 33 years in Massachusetts. And in 2016, my wife, Vicki Freyleue, and I bought the family home from my sisters, and we moved here to Baldwinsville, and we've built a wonderful life, and we're very happy to be here. But we both believe that there are things that need to be done in the village of Baldwinsville that we really will require some new energy and vision on the village board. Hence our reason for running.
And Jim, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself and your background?
So I am married and have one son who's currently in SUNY Buffalo taking accounting. I was recruited to come up to Central New York as part of a job offer. We ended up settling in Baldwinsville 14 years ago. And I can honestly say it is the best place we have ever lived, and I have lived many places. It is a fabulous place to raise a family, and we love every minute of it here. My background, I am a supply chain and US Customs law expert. That has been most of my career. I solve problems, other people's problems, work on process improvements and overall efficiency. I understand that the village has a lot of challenges with infrastructure and a number of other things that I feel that I am uniquely suited to help them solve. And because I love the village so much, I wanted to be elected as a board trustee so I can assist and help and try and fix the things that we know we're struggling with in the village.
Oh, that's awesome. And Brian, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Brian Burmeister. I'm a resident of the village of Baldwinsville for about the last almost 11 years now. I also lived in the Baldwinsville area even longer than that, but just in Lysander, not in the village per se. My daughter graduated Baker High in 2018. My son graduated in 22. And you know, the roots are here, so that's awesome. And I've been amazed how well the village has already been doing. But then, as we've been doing some research, that I was joined up with my colleagues who are running for the other seats as trustees, Donna and James, and I think we're just scratching the surface. There's a lot more that can be done. And what I bring to the table, I was in corporate America for about 30 years. I did everything from media relations to public relations to negotiating health insurance and vendor contracts to selling pharmaceuticals. I sold solar thermal equipment at one point. I've done a lot of different things that actually probably will I'll be able to use a little bit of everything, hopefully, as a trustee. I have a degree in English from Illinois Wesleyan. I love history. I have a history minor. I also studied urban planning at Harvard University's Graduate School of Design. And I still have a passion for all of that. So I look forward to being able to kind of maybe balance the the business aspect, the very practical things, with maybe some of the visionary things, so that we can have the vision, we can get those things done, and together we can make them really work in a practical way.
Awesome. Well, as I said earlier, the election is in a weird time. It's Tuesday, March 19th, which is just upcoming Tuesday. You've had to decide to run in our winter months here in sunny Central New York. So that begs the question, why are you doing this? It's hard to run for office, and a lot of people don't even know what villages do. So we'll start with you, Jim. Why are you running for village board in Baldwinsville?
Because I see the challenges that the village is facing. The infrastructure is ailing, aging, needs help. There are many of other areas that could be improved, bringing people into the village. My wife is an active member in the village, and I felt that I needed to do my part as well, and I wanted to do my part. So that's
great. That's it. wanting to be a part of public service is a noble thing. Brian, why have you decided to run for office in the village of Baldwinsville?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's that dissimilar from what James said. I do want to be involved. I think I've always wanted to help people and to try to leave something better than I've found it. And honestly, until the end of last year, when this was even first suggested that it might even be an opportunity to pursue, I'm not sure that I would have thought that I would have been able to make some impact. But now I'm convinced that all three of us and the rest of the board of trustees and the mayor are going to be able to really do that. And that whether that's pursuing grants to get the work done that we need to do, or whether that's just a matter of working together and accomplish things that are already sort of at the table, if you will. So yeah, I'm looking forward to helping. I've done a lot of volunteer work over the years. Despite my business aspect, I'm also a small landlord here in town. So I know the good and the bad and the ugly of that part of it. And we've got some ugly. So we've got some landlord situations in Baldwinsville, like a lot of the other villages. And we need to address those. But I also think, there's a lot that we can do together. And again, we're starting from an awesome baseline. We all love the village the way it is now. We're just saying there's so much more that we can do and it can be.
And Donna, same question to you.
Yes,
Why are you deciding to come off the sidelines and run for election here in Baldwinsville?
Okay, well, first of all, there were a couple of things I did not include about my background in my previous answer. That I practiced as a criminal appellate attorney in Boston and state and federal courts for 30 years. So, I've got that skill set. I understand how statutes work and how the legal system works, and that's a great help for me. I'm retired from the practice now, and I am currently a member of the village planning board. So that's been a great learning experience for me to learn, how the village runs. But the reason I am running is because we need a more responsive board of trustees that listens to the residents of Baldwinsville. We have, Baldwinsville is a beautiful community. We have amazing assets. We have a lovely historic downtown. We have many beautiful historic homes in the village. And we have this amazing waterfront that, frankly, is an underused asset. And, there's so much we can do there. We have infrastructural issues. We have massive problems with our water and sewer system, and this affects businesses downtown. They have been forced to close in recent months because of water main breaks. I speak for myself. At our house, we live in a 176-year-old house in the center of town, and the sewer system backed up into our basement some months ago, and it was an incredibly expensive, disgusting job to clean up. And so these are things that we need to get out and get the money that is out there that the village has not aggressively sought. And we need to address these questions. And it's going to take time, and it's going to take an enormous amount of money, but it has to be done. It has to be done to bring Baldwinsville into the 21st century. And I use as an example, a counterexample to what we've done in Baldwinsville in terms of going after state and federal funds to address these issues, is the village of Phoenix, which is quite small. It's less than a third the size of Baldwinsville. And they've had a grant writer on retainer for 15 years now. And right now, currently, the village of Phoenix has over $5 million in grant money on hand for village improvements. We have nothing like that here. And we need to go after that money. We also have problems with absentee landlords and derelict properties. We need much stronger code enforcement in Baldwinsville. And Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot. It's a lot to do.
There is a lot. I could go on
But-
forever on this.
But that kind of leads me into my next question here. So, if you are lucky enough to be selected by the citizens of Baldwinsville to be on the village board of trustees, and we'll start this question with you, Brian. What are you hoping to accomplish in your first term? What are some of the things that you would like to prioritize in the first term?
Sure. Don already touched on some of them. We need to aggressively pursue grant money that's out there. There's never a guarantee you're going to get the grant money, but there's one guarantee to be sure that you're not going to get the money, and that's to not apply. So, but a key part of that is tying in a new community plan. You probably can't even apply for the grant in some of the grants without showing how it fits into your overall plan, but it's also just good stewardship of village resources and the village attitude. We need to have a plan that is sure to hit on all of the stakeholders, get buy-in from everybody that needs to, and then that we're able to stick with it and implement it in a practical way. Some of those things might be as easy as, we have a sidewalk program that hasn't been finished and it's funded already. Some of that was because of COVID, but it's time to restart and be sure that we've got that done. Maybe it can be expanded. We would certainly love to relight the bridge. Everyone is wondering what happened to that. It was wonderful while it was there. We don't know the exact cost yet, but those are the things we're going to have access to when we're elected, and we'll be able to dig right in and see really what is involved in something like that. There's a host of other things of that nature that we might be able to do faster than we even think. There's some really long-term things that are going to take some time. Going after grants for replacing the water and the sewer systems. That's going to be a sizable grant, and it may have to be done in phases, and it'll have to be plotted out, and it's going to be messy and disruptive. But you can't live without those things. We can't keep promoting or growing without the basic infrastructure in place. I don't want to steal all the thunder, so I'll give it to my colleague.
It's okay. I don't think you can steal the thunder from Donna if you try. But Donna, you're next. Donna, what do you want to prioritize in your first term if you're lucky enough to be elected by the citizens?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of things, but one particular issue that I speak about a lot, and this is something I've talked about with downtown business owners as well, is the question of walkability and pedestrian safety. The Four Corners of Baldwinsville is the convergence of 3 state highways. And one of the things that happens when you have 3 state highways converging in a 200-plus-year-old town is that you get giant trucks coming through, 18-wheelers that really are just barely able to negotiate this fairly narrow intersection, and they drive up on the sidewalks. They're threatening property, they're a menace to pedestrians, and a lot of business owners, I've talked to them, and they've said to me, we need to do something about this. And I recently met with Stacey Finney, the mayor of Liverpool, and we discussed this very issue. And Liverpool is currently doing some things to take action because, they have one state route going through Liverpool. It's 370, but the other routes going through are county highways. And so they have a little more jurisdiction over, what happens with truck traffic on county routes. The problem with state routes is that villages have no say over what travels over state routes. So I'm working with Mayor Finney, and she has also connected me with people in Saratoga Springs and Skinny Atlas. Those are the people that she's currently been in contact with, who are dealing with the same problem. And what we have determined is that we should try to build a coalition of villages and smaller cities across the state that are dealing with this issue of, truck traffic and the effect it has on the enjoyability of the downtown experience for both visitors and residents alike, and to work with our state senators and assembly people on this. And to that end, I'm going to be making contact with both Senator John Mannion, and I know he's very busy, but I've certainly talked to him, and also to Rachel May. And
Both
see
of
what
them
we
are
do
still.
about it. But this is a pressing issue that downtown businesses have spoken to me about, and that's something I'm going to focus on.
Senator Mannion may be busy, but he's very good at constituent service, so he's going to help you out.
I do know that. I know that.
Jim, if you're elected to the village board, what are you hoping to prioritize in your first term?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the infrastructure in the village is really aging. We've got water breaks that are continuing to happen more and more. It's just killing some of the village's businesses, especially in the downtown area when everything shuts down. And the septic is not in any better shape. We need another water tower for pressure. So the first thing that I would do is we need to hire a village engineer, a full-time village engineer. There has been a village plan. It's very antiquated now. I don't know if it's even still viable, but the first thing is hire the engineer, reevaluate the plan, reassess it, and bring it up to current conditions. Then hire a grant writer. Go after that money that will start solving all these problems that we're facing in the village. You can't get the grants until you have a village plan that's up to date with code. Then after that, I talked to all of the businesses. The businesses are struggling in the village. They're struggling because we don't have enough events that bring people from outside the village into the village and spend their money, spend their time shopping, eating, wandering around. Let's improve that. The Paper Mill Island has not had events in years. Those events used to pull in people from all around us. We need to start those events back up. And I know there are some groups that are starting to work on that. But let's bring in family-friendly and some evening events to increase the visibility and the input of people and purchases and events.
I just want to add something, that there is a large amount of money in a Paper Mill Island fund that remains unspent on improving and promoting the venue. So.
Yeah, it's funny because I used to go to the paper mill events, and I've been wondering about what happened to the paper mill and why why that island is seemed to I think a lot of people attribute that kind of stuff to COVID and that kind of thing, but we're well past that now. So I'm so glad you guys brought that up.
I'd say I used to bring my kids here from Massachusetts in the summer, to see their grandparents, and they were so impressed with all the great stuff that was happening on Paper Mill Island, and they would be very disappointed to see what's happening now.
Right. It's part of the character of the village. It's not, it's like Dickens of A Christmas in Skinny Atlas, or it's something that the village was known for, and it's too bad that it's been kind of dormant for a while. So, in addition to your candidacy, there's a couple proposals on the Baldwinsville ballot. I've talked about it on this program, the dueling proposals for moving the election. But just to give a background, so you don't have to, is that we have the village board decided to put in a proposal to move the elections from March to June, knowing that there was a citizen-led petition referendum that I believe all three of you were part of, to move the elections from March to November. So there will be two propositions. Proposition 1 to move it to June, Proposition 2 to move it to November. And so I just want to get your thoughts on these dueling propositions and why is this such an important issue that both sides had to weigh in on different dates, but it is, it does seem that it is something that is, we see the same thing happen in Fayetteville. In June, Liverpool's thinking about doing this as well. So this is on the zeitgeist of the community. And we'll start with you, Donna. What are your thoughts on these dueling propositions, and why do you think that this is so important?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked, Dustin. Really, the precipitating event that drove me to finally run, I've been contemplating it, but what really made me decide to take on this kind of crazy quest was the response of the current Board of Trustees to this citizen-led initiative to move elections from March to November. We have had a disgraceful record of poor turnout in village elections for years on end. A good year, we may get 200 people, showing up to vote out of almost 5,300 registered voters in the village of Baldwinsville. And that by any measure is unacceptable. And we believe that, elections should be when people know it's election day. Election day is in November. People know that. I think James can attest to this, and as well as some other people who we've spoken to, that people expect elections in November. As a matter of fact, there was one person in our area who refused to believe that village elections were in March. He said, no, village elections are in November.
And she was a long timer, apparently, right?
These are people who've lived in Baldwinsville for decades, and they never knew that village elections were in March, so they never voted. So we've had consistently a very small group of a couple of hundred people, varying probably, like a really good election year, there might be 400 who show up. So we send a letter to the village board, a group of us, there were about 39 people, bipartisan. We had Republicans, Democrats, and independents who signed this letter asking the Board of Trustees to place a referendum on the ballot to decide whether we should move village elections from March to November. Well, their response to it, we had a very beloved and respected member of the community present that letter to them. And somebody, they all knew, she was a well-known high school teacher, and and their response, first of all, they did not ever discuss the question of whether we should let the citizens decide. Instead, their response was to talk about their own objections to elections in November. And one of their initial response was really to defend low turnout by talking about how, well, if you only have a few hundred people, those are the people who care. It's quality over quantity. They literally use that phrase, that we prefer quality over quantity. So that they don't trust the voters. And we told, we said in the letter that, that if they declined to place this initiative on the ballot, that we were going to circulate a petition to do it on our own. So their response to that was to vote to place this June election referendum on the ballot. And of course, the problem with June elections, of course, it's a busy month. There's regents exams, people are planning vacations, taking vacations, and there's also primaries in June. And by state law, village elections would be held on the third Tuesday in June, while primaries would be on the fourth Tuesday in June at two different polling places. Village elections are from noon to 9 at the village hall. And so, it seemed to me that all that did was confuse the issue. And I felt that they were not listening to the citizens. We submitted petitions with 297 signatures. That's probably more people than have ever voted for most of the people currently sitting on the board. And more than typically turn out for village elections in March. But they completely discounted that. And they went from, low turnout is good to national parties are going to rush in and take over. And that Baldwinsville is going to be completely crushed by this onslaught of national party politics. And my response to that is, well, what are the national issues that would ever come up in the village of Baldwinsville? And the answer is none. There are none.
We don't. The village doesn't decide any of those issues.
That's right. And those arguments have been passed around before. Anytime you're not the only village who's thought about moving to November. You're not the only one that has moved to November. In fact, we've had 5 villages in Onondaga County that moved to November, and
all successfully.
Right. Some of them run on party lines, but they ran on party lines before. None of them have switched because of that, and they've all had way more turnout than they had before. But Jim, I want to get you in on this. What are your thoughts on these proposals?
I'm glad you asked. This was the key reason that actually got me interested and considering to run for a position on the village trustee board. To me, not having a good turnout is unacceptable in a village when you're trying to govern by the village as a group wanting you to run and manage their town. If there's almost no turnout, what is that saying? When I walked around and I went to many different homes, and I was one of the ones that was getting the signatures, not a single person asked me what my affiliation was. What they wanted to know was, will this put the election in November when we all expect it to be? Well, that is the intent. I did ask them initially, so tell me, have you been in the village a long time? Oh, I've been here all my life. Well, when's the village elections? I don't know. Well, if you've been a lifelong resident, that tells me 2 things. Number 1, you've never voted. But number 2, the village hasn't done even a remotely adequate job of educating the people that live in the village as to when the vote is. So we need to fix that. I believe that having a lot more people voting gives a better representation of what the people in the village actually want. And we should do absolutely everything to increase that and not restrict it. Having a vote in June is only going to totally mess with people's minds. They're not going to attend. It's going to restrict the amount of voters that show up. And we're not going to have the representation level that we hope for in this election. I've had many people use colorful language when I explained that, please, you need to vote yes to November and no to the June. And when they ask me, where did the bleepity bleep June come from? And I explain it, they use words that I don't want to repeat on a family show with what their thought process was on that.
And Brian, what are your thoughts on this? Kind of pipe it in here, but I think you're ready to go on this. But what are your thoughts on these proposals?
Well, how to follow what James said. Yeah, I had that experience as I was soliciting signatures for the petition to get the referendum to move it to November as well. And I will confess, I lived in the village for years and I never knew when the date was. I thought I was being diligent. I hit the county, I hit the town, I hit all the big ones. I did the school board. I couldn't believe I didn't hit the other ones. I think what we definitely have on our side in moving it to November is common sense and logic. Mm-hmm. It's really hard I don't understand what their arguments are for June, except to say that, we're going to get washed away in these national elections. But, that brings me back to one, we at Brighter Baldwinsville we've decided to do this party, particularly on a local level, in part because it's a long tradition here in the village of Baldwinsville to not have national parties, but also to help us avoid those divisive issues, because they have no role here.
Right.
There's nothing we're deciding here in the village that is going to have impact on anything that doesn't affect the village. So, we're talking potholes and lights and water and business incentives and grant writing and how to be good neighbors, and how to take pride in our neighborhood and encourage other people to do the same. So yeah, I'm dumbfounded why they would do that. I'm still a little confused how both propositions could actually pass, I guess, because they are technically standalone propositions. So if they both get more yeses than nos, correct me if I'm wrong, they both could pass, and then we'd end up with some sort of a legal issue. I don't know how, if the people spoke on the petition and didn't speak on the other one, that would have some merit, but we probably would have to have another March election referendum later on. And that would just defeat the whole purpose. So hopefully we'll be able to keep everything straight, and our constituents will be able to do that, but it is confusing.
It is. And it's so confusing that, being the Board of Elections, I've run this by the state board, and their answer was, we don't know. This hasn't happened before. We've never had this kind of dueling petition. And I'm sure it would have to go into court if both of them pass. Now, you would imagine that if some people want June and don't want November, they're going to vote yes on June, no on November, and vice versa. Yes on November, no on June. That would be the simplest way, or if both of them fail. That would also be a simple way. But if both of them pass, no matter, it's not one of those things like, well, this got more votes than that other one got votes. And there's it could be a situation where both of them are then thrown out because the electorate is giving two directives to the village that they can't, that don't match. So
right.
It would be better if one of them passed or the other passed, not both. So a choice should be made, but it's kind of hard because the way propositions have to be, they have to be yes or no. They can't be like, I choose June, I choose November. We looked into that. That wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think the people will have their choice on the 19th, and they're going to have to make that choice. And it's up to, all of you to do what you've been doing all along and continuing to make that option available for people to discuss. So I'm glad you're doing that. I'm glad you're a part of that.
There's something I'd like to add about this.
Yeah.
One of the arguments, the phrases I hear a lot is that, well, village issues will be lost in November. And my response to that is village issues are lost in March.
Right.
They're lost in March because hardly
matter.
anybody shows up to vote on them, and nobody campaigns. And my response to the idea that it's going to be this big problem, that village issues are going to be overwhelmed by national politics and this and that in November, is that, well, then get out and campaign and get people, to know and understand what the issues are. And I came up with a phrase a couple of days ago about this, and it's as simple as this is my advice to all candidates who fear issues are going to be lost. If you're worried about uninformed voters, inform the voters.
Yep.
Well said.
I think we're going to have to leave it. Well, no, you know what? We're going to do one more round with my favorite question. And that is, what haven't we talked about? This is your free for all. You can talk about your dog. You can talk about a Baldwinsville issue, whatever you want the people to know. It's your last impression of voters. We're going to start with you, James. What haven't we talked about that you want people to know about?
So we, as Syracuse, as Baldwinsville, as the surrounding areas, have been off the national radar for a very long time. That ended abruptly when Amazon built their warehouse. What's happening right now? Micron is building one of the biggest semiconductor plants in the country here. That's going to continue. That's going to drive a lot of changes to our villages, Baldwinsville in particular. It's a fabulous place to live. We already have more people wanting to move in than there's housing for. We really need to do something to accommodate what we expect is coming so that this village can retain its unique identity and be the fabulous place that everyone wants to live.
Awesome. And Brian, I think
No, Brian's gone.
yeah, Brian walked away. We'll go with you, Donna.
Okay,
What
well-
haven't we talked about?
Well, I want to, add on to what James is saying about housing in the village. That we have, we have some wonderful, beautiful housing stock in this village, but we also have some problems with decrepit structures that people are living in. The rental housing stock, in particular, in the village of Baldwinsville, is not high quality. I mean, there's some high quality, but there's a lot that is very substandard, and we need to do something about that. Rents are very expensive, and we have absentee landlords. I mean, I did mention this, but I think it's a significant problem. And there are people who own properties. They live far away, and they don't abide by codes, and the houses are really barely habitable. And so we need really much more strict and consistent code enforcement throughout the village, to improve the basic living conditions of our inhabitants.
Awesome. Well, and Brian's back. Good. So Brian, you get to end this. You're muted, so you got to unmute. But you get to end this. What haven't we talked about that you want people to know?
I think they've covered it really well. Sorry, I had to step away. My cat knocked over something, and
That happens.
Oh my God. The figures, right?
We're used
like
to that
mopping
since
up
the
something.
pandemic, so it's all
Oh my
good.
God. Exactly. At least she wasn't on screen. Yeah, I mean, we are heartfelt. We're together as the three of us on all of these platforms. And if there's questions that you or people watching this have, they could go to Baldwinsville, BrighterBaldwinsville.org, or they can go to Brighter Baldwinsville on Facebook, or they can find one of us. And we're out, we're going door to door. We're working this hard, and hopefully it'll pay off on March 19th.
Amen.
All right. Yes.
Amen.
March 19th, noon to 9. Donna, Jim, Brian, thank you so much for coming on Zoom with Czarny, spending some time, but most importantly, thank you for running, because it's hard work to go out there and put your name out there. You're not going to get rich, and
Nope.
you're not going to get famous running for village elections, but you are doing the work for your neighbors, and that's very noble. So I will always want to thank you, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you for
guys.
Thank you.
And that was my interview with the Brighter Baldwinsville village candidates. As I said, this weekend, I'm running a little behind, but I will do a weekly walk this weekend, focusing on Fayetteville and Baldwinsville village elections. And then, of course, Tuesday, March 19th, are the village elections, noon to 9 in Baldwinsville, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. in Fayetteville. There's also uncontested elections in Manoa, Marcellus, and Fabius. Those polls are noon to 9. Although there is talk of a write-in candidacy in Marcellus, so but we don't run those elections there here at the Board of Elections, so I don't have as much information about that. But go to our page at onvote.net and check it out. Next week, Commissioner Nakar on Monday, we'll be talking all about village elections again. We're just going to keep talking about village elections till they're done on the 19th. So a little preview of the village elections and the races that are going on my Commissioner Nakar. My Zoom with Czarny next week with Joanna Denise of the Brennan Center. We talk about the public campaign finance program that is launching in New York this year. Weekly walk this weekend talked about how that's going to be the village candidates. And then every week going forward is going to be some kind of political subdivision. We'll have some recap of the village elections as well, and the presidential primary on April 2nd. So stay tuned. Go to dustinzarny.com for all content. You can subscribe and get an email anytime I post. I post something almost once a day, whether it's election news or content related. So check it out. Bye-bye.